It's Friday, November 8th. Let's talk PlayStation. You'll have to excuse me for this episode if I sometimes sound a little bit weird. I cut my tongue this past week and it really hurts, and sometimes it sounds weird when I talk because I'm trying to cope with the pain a little bit, so bear with me. It really sucks. I honestly don't know how I did it. I must have like bit my tongue when I was sleeping or something. That sucks, dude. Alright, PlayStation news. Let's cover up some small news stories before we get into our whole cover story and, you know, the title and thumbnail and all that. This past week, PS Vita got firmware update 3.0, and this is the big firmware update that's prepping the PS Vita for, you guessed it, PS4, that thing that's kind of coming out in like 7 days. So the PS Vita got updated to 3.0. Came with some other features, you know, not just the PS4 Link app, some other things like, you know, the Friends app got redesigned a little bit. A parental controls app was put on the PS Vita. You can take panoramic pictures, and I believe the PS Vita has now been prepped for up to 2,000 friends, so you can now add up to 2,000 friends on Vita. I don't think it works on PS3 just yet, but I believe Vita's list is now expanded to reflect that, so you can now add more people past 100 friends. And yeah, obviously the PS4 Link app is now here, and don't know if that's it's not gonna focus, what am I saying, but yeah, man, if you start that bad boy up, you can start trying to connect to a PS4 that you don't own. I've been doing it over and over again, and it still says it can't find a PS4, and you know, I don't have a PS4 yet, much like many people don't have. But it does give you an option for second screen experiences or remote play. So second screen would be to possibly use the Vita for, you know, display a map, or if a game supports it in that way, or it can be, you know, co-op controller. It can, you know, for example, Knack was demonstrating that, where you could play Knack with a PS Vita and your friend could be using a DualShock 4 or vice versa. And then, of course, remote play is the big thing, where you can play PS4 games on your Vita. So your Vita is now ready to go. Moving on, Sony Computer Entertainment has confirmed that they have sold 80 million PS3s worldwide. So the PS3 has just hit 80 million worldwide. Big number, obviously. As we've talked about before, a couple months ago, PS3 finally did cross over its biggest competitor, the Xbox 360, in worldwide sales. They're still pretty much right there in terms of sales, but PS3 has just inched its way ahead, and it's at 80 million worldwide. Again, big number. Like, it's crazy that they got this far, you know, because the PS3 had such a terrible start. I mean, 2006 was a dark time for Sony. It was full of laughs and memes left and right, and the company was in just a really big rut with the PS3, so it's crazy that they were able to turn it around, which shows that no matter how low a company can get, they can certainly climb their way back up. So, of course, PlayStation 4 is coming out soon, and of course, games are coming out for it. It has over 20 launch games available, but, you know, I am one of those people that likes to use my gaming machines as media hubs, and you might be asking yourself, well, what is my PS4 going to offer me in terms of applications? Sony has detailed the amount of number of applications and what applications are going to be available day one to you when you pick up your PS4. So day one for PS4, you can expect Amazon Instant Video, Crackle, Crunchyroll, Epix, Hulu Plus, NBA Game Time, Netflix, NHL Game Center, Redbox Instant, Vudu, and Yup TV in terms of services day one to download to your PS4 and to, you know, use TV stuff and all that. Pretty good, healthy amount of apps. Obviously, we want all these things day one. It's basic functionality. We should have these things. There's still a couple of things missing from it, obviously. One big thing like HBO Go. PlayStation fans have been asking for that for a while. Hopefully, that'll come at some point, but that's what you'll be using day one if you know, choose to do so. So one thing we talked about a few months ago on Let's Talk PlayStation is virtual reality, and how Sony might be developing their own in-house virtual reality set, you know, head-mounted display for the PS4. And now we've got a little bit more evidence about that. Sony has recently, well, not recently, but they've filed patents for that sort of technology. So it was recently discovered that Sony filed 2 patents back in May, basically detailing, you know, head-mounted display technology, which would be virtual reality, and then audio detection technology. Both of the patents in question are kind of very broad in terms of how they're going to actually work and operate, sort of covering, you know, like a broad aspect of how they're going to actually carry out doing this if they happen to use these patents and actually make this technology. But the audio patent kind of details how, you know, it's going to be using noise canceling technology to sort of simulate real world things, you know. That sort of audio technology is hinted at being used on the, you know, actual head mounted display. So you put on a display and you actually have headphones on, sort of, you know, again, just kind of immersing you in that experience, so it kind of makes it sound like something's coming from behind you or to the left of you, and, you know, again, simulates real life noises. And then the display, of course, is a display, and that sort of goes into a broader sense of topic as well, in terms of, you know, image stabilization and detecting your actual head movements, which might be incorporated with the PlayStation camera, and of course the actual head-mounted display is you seeing an image that, you know, is completely in your field of view. Again, very broad topic. Like, these patents don't tell us much of anything about what we could possibly be seeing, but it sort of just, it adds more evidence to that Sony might be actually doing this. What adds even more evidence to these incredibly vague patents is that they were both filed by 2 Evolution Studios employees. And Evolution Studios is a Sony-owned developer, and they're making Drive Club right now. That's what we talked about a couple months ago on that episode of Let's Talk PlayStation. So it really adds more evidence that Sony could in fact be working on their own virtual VR headset for the PlayStation 4. And again, the original rumor back then was that Sony was going to show this off at Gamescom 2013, but instead delayed it to 2014, so who knows, we'll have to wait and see if it actually comes to fruition. Alright, let's move into our big topic for today's episode. Resolution gate is what they're calling it, this whole resolution scenario. Frames per second, resolution, displays, all that good stuff. Now, this has been going on for a while. For the past, like, 3 weeks, upwards to a month, this sort of huge controversy has been going on about this little game right here, Call of Duty Ghosts. I did get my PS4 copy, by the way, so I'm showing it off in front of the camera. Ooh, look at me, I'm so cool. Point being, the big controversy for the past 3 weeks is that the PlayStation 4 version is running at a native 1080p resolution, while the Xbox One version is running at 720p and it has to be upscaled to 1080p. Basically saying straight up, like, a third-party developer has optimized the PlayStation 4 version, and the Xbox One version can't quite reach that benchmark. And this is serious stuff, people. I mean, 1, it's the internet. 2, this is regarding video games. 3, this is regarding video game consoles. And, you know, 4, it's regarding a third-party game and how it's better on one system and not so great on the other. Now, like I said, this has been going on for 3 weeks, and the reason why I didn't cover it is because, well, 1, this is like my show, so I'll talk about whatever I think is most important, and for a while I just didn't deem this stuff important. A lot of people like to fixate on resolution and frames per second and performance, and I'm all for that stuff, right? Like, of course I want my games to be of high resolution. Of course I want my games to be as high of a frames per second as the developers can possibly get it. But I personally am one of those people that doesn't mind. I don't mind it. Of course I want those things, but if a game's 720p 30 frames per second, I'm perfectly content with that. I'm just okay with that, you know? So I didn't deem this scenario that big of a deal, which is why I didn't talk about it. But as the weeks progressed, as more information got confirmed, as Infinity Ward started to confirm it, and how Infinity Ward also wouldn't talk about it, and how there's NDAs involving companies not being able to say directly that one version's better than the other, it has turned into a much bigger controversy, and now it's gotten to the point where I think we should touch on it. Now, for the most part, this whole scenario is very, you know, Xbox One focused, you know, because the PS4 version's fine. It's running at 1080p, 60 frames per second, you know, it's obviously the better version if you care about that sort of situation where you care about the resolution and all that. So it's obviously the better version. So the whole sort of talking point for a lot of people in comments, threads, blogs is that, you know, like, people are concerned about the Xbox One over time, about how if it's not powerful enough, if it can't run a game like Call of Duty this early into the life cycle and all that. So it's really more of a conversation for the Microsoft side. And this is the PlayStation show. So obviously I'm not going to talk about my concerns of the Xbox One version or sort of those differences. I mean, this is a pro PS4 story. This is where, you know, Sony made a powerful console and it's starting to show very early on in the console generation. And I didn't even care to talk about it, which kind of shows I really just do not care about this sort of stuff. But let's realistically talk about this. Is the fact that the PS4 is more powerful, is it the, you know, the fact that third-party games are already starting to look better on the system and can push higher resolutions and frame rates for certain games, it begs the question, you know, is this going to be a huge advantage for Sony? Is this something that's going to help them out in the long run? And this is where everyone starts to get really sort of touchy-feely and, like, crazy insane about the subject, because a lot of gaming journalists, like, you know, Adam Sessler and a lot of the IGN guys, you know, a lot of people sort of in that, you know, a spotlight like to talk about how it's not that big of a deal, right? They're downplaying it like, oh, resolution isn't a big deal, frames per second isn't a big deal, we've been playing games like these for years, blah, blah, games are what matter, gameplay is what matter. And of course all that's true, right? But these guys are still getting attacked left and right because they're not addressing the issue at hand, and they're sort of, like, I guess, defending the Xbox One or whatever. But You know, and I have sort of the same. I'm not gonna lie, I have the same opinions as them. Like, gameplay is at the core, and, you know, I don't care about resolution, but realistically, like, is something like resolution and frames per second and performance really going to matter in the long run? One easy way to sort of talk about this situation is, like, for example, the PS3 and Xbox 360. Their console life cycles, their whole generation. Whether you like it or not, the Xbox 360 had way better third-party games. There were definitely third-party games that were better on PS3, without a doubt. There were some versions that ran better and looked better on PS3, but that was the minority. Early on with the 360, and even later on with certain games, you know, 360 definitely had better third-party games, because the system was easier to develop for. It did actually have more RAM, and that actually helped them out in certain key aspects, and overall the games just started to perform better, and they just looked better. And a lot of people like to play the lazy developer card on PS3, blah blah blah, and that's for another discussion. But point being, that was a sort of situation. That was a situation where the 360 had the upper hand in terms of third-party games. Now, how did it play out for them? Well, in the long run, you know, obviously Microsoft had a year head start with the 360. They were a cheaper system. They had better games at the time, early on, mind you. So this is why, you know, it got to a point where there were more Xbox 360s out there, and more people were buying Xbox 360 games. So that might answer as to why third-party games always had higher sales on 360, because that's sort of what it really comes down to. If you're talking about third-party games, and when one version's superior to the other, you have to go into, like, sales, for example, because what's really going to benefit one company over the other. For these big hardware makers, software sales are what really matters. So obviously, when Microsoft sells more copies of a game than Sony is, for example, for one specific game like Call of Duty or Grand Theft Auto, they're going to make more money. But Sony's going to make money too, but it's the fact that they sort of got the higher sell rate of the third-party game, you know what I'm saying? Now, it begs the question, did third-party games on 360 always sell better because they perhaps performed better? Or because the 360 just had that lead, you know, and people love Xbox Live and they're invested in the ecosystem, that's where their friends are. And for the most part, I think that is the answer. I mean, at the end of the day, whether you want to hear it or not, resolution and frames per second and all that are not the kind of things that casual consumers look at and care about. Now, I'm not trying to join all these other journalists and guys trying to downplay the whole resolution thing, because, you know, again, a lot of people do care about this thing. And my advice to those people who care about it is then buy the game that plays best on the other platform. Or if you're one of those PC guys, buy it on PC. You can set it to 120 billion frames per second and then have the graphics look as amazing as you want, right? You know, wherever you want to buy that game, go ahead and buy it. But for a lot of people, and this is the truth, the majority of people, casual consumers, the majority of sales of these video games, people aren't going to care about that stuff. It's not like I'm trying to downplay Sony's advantage here, because it's obviously a good advantage. Any advantage is a good advantage, you know? It's just the fact that Sony needs to take that opportunity and run away with it, you know? Like, if you're, you know, it's obviously pretty much proven at this point, and, you know, even developers are saying this, everybody's saying, well, like the PS4 is more powerful than the Xbox One. And it's starting to show early on. I don't know how that's going to happen long term. We obviously can't predict that. These systems are still going to, you know, people, that's the thing, it's way too early to really even talk about this stuff, right? Because whether you like it or not, these games are, it's launch day, they're still being optimized. People like to say, because PS4 and X1 are more like PCs, that the games aren't going to look better over time, but I guarantee you they are. They are going to look better, and the resolution and frame rates are going to get better. That's just the simple truth. Like, it's going to get better. This is launch. All these launch games are going to be rusty, right? So for that long-term thing, we can't really talk about it. But even early term, if Sony's got this advantage, they need to take advantage of it. Even if this is something that casual consumers don't care about and don't even know about, like, some people don't even know about this stuff, right? But it's Sony's chance to run away with it. And this is one of the problems Sony has, is that they don't market properly. Now, sure, Sony's been pretty aggressive at their press conferences and interviews and things where they'll directly attack their competition or make, you know, pot shot jokes and stuff like that. But the fact of the matter is, we're the only ones that are reading that. And by we, informed gamers, you know, people like me, people like you that are watching this video. The, you know, casual audience isn't going to see that. And I hate keep throwing out the word casual and stuff, but that's like the whole point of it. There's a certain customer base that is not involved in any of this stuff, any of these YouTube videos, any of these interviews, any of these press conferences, any of this stuff. They don't know anything about it. They just buy the system they want because, you know, whatever they prefer. My PS3 just fell asleep. But point being, even if the PS4 version of Call of Duty Ghosts is superior in terms of resolution, even if other third-party games down the line are superior, are always better on the PS4. it goes down to, you know, people aren't going to know about that stuff. So if that's the case, if this is sort of one of those situations where Sony has an opportunity to go out there and tell people about it, not just informed gamers like us, because we already know about this stuff, we're talking about it right now, but those uninformed consumers, take that opportunity to just flat out tell people, run commercials saying best on PS4 or native 1080p resolution or it's the superior version of so-and-so game, and keep doing this over the lifespan of the console, you know, and keep informing people over and over again that maybe even own X1's like, hey, you're playing on an inferior system or blah, blah, blah. You know, that's kind of the aggressive marketing you need to do if you want to, you know, beat the competition. Because the fact of the matter is Microsoft's still a great competitor. You know, Sony is going to have a tough time in America. I guarantee you they still will have a tough time in America. They gotta, it's one of those situations where they have another advantage, right? Because they've been doing great with PS4, but they gotta keep moving with it, and they gotta be aggressive, and sometimes they're just not aggressive. Hopefully I didn't piss off any resolution frames per second people that are really, like, you know, up in arms about this sort of situation, but me personally, I don't care that much about it, and quite frankly, it's not going to affect sales unless, you know, Sony or Microsoft do something about it to make it affect sales drastically. Because we are the minority in terms of game sales, you know. How many copies did GTA 5 sell? I guarantee you, what, 80% of that? A majority number of those copies are sold to casual consumers, you know. And people don't care about which version was better for GTA 5. They cared about what friends where all their friends bought the game, you know. So everyone, Next Generation is next week. And since it's next week, let's talk about some things that'll be happening on this YouTube channel. Since next week, you know, Let's Talk PlayStation is always on Fridays, but Friday night, PS4 comes out. There'll be midnight launches, and I'm going to go get a system, obviously. Like, why not? Obviously. So, I'll probably actually upload Let's Talk PlayStation early next week. So it'll probably go up Thursday or possibly even Wednesday night. It's going to be done early because Friday I'm going to go get my PS4, and I'm obviously going to do videos on it. Like, obviously. Obviously, I'm going to cover the system, so I'll do all sorts of videos. OS walkthroughs, tutorials, you know, how to swap out your hard drive. Like, I'm going to do a solid-state drive test on the PS4, a solid-state hybrid drive, excuse me, because I don't have an SSD, but all sorts of tests. I'll be doing all that. Obviously, game reviews. I have games right now. I'm going to be downloading stuff and playing it and blah, blah, blah. Like coverage, right? Like you're going to expect it on this channel. Much like I did with the PS3 Super Slim and then the PS Vita 2000. When PlayStation hardware comes out, I will be like buying it and reviewing it and doing videos on it. And don't forget, PS Vita TV actually comes out November 14th, and that'll take a few days to get shipped to me, but you can expect PS Vita TV videos. And this Tuesday, Ratchet & Clank Into the Nexus comes out. I'll be reviewing that. I'll be busy. I'll be playing some video games, people. So basically, next week, expect Let's Talk PlayStation early, and obviously expect a bunch of videos, a bunch of influx of videos coming into this YouTube channel for you to click and watch and stuff. And obviously, oh yeah, awesome, hey. And PS4, you know, the friends list and Vita friends list, you know, all that PSN friends list in whole is being expanded to 2,000 friends. You can now add me. I've had a full list for a while, but please write your name or something in it, because I do remember your YouTube names. I do. You don't think I do, but I do. So add me, have fun, have a great week. Hope you're excited for video games. I know I am, and hand gestures. That concludes this week's episode of Let's Talk PlayStation. I'm Ryan Benecki. Thank you for talking with me, and I will see you in not Friday, so Wednesday or Thursday maybe.